Hello and greetings, everyone. My name is Dr. Thomas Moore, and I am going to be helping you out in this journey as we go through Christian leadership. Today, we're looking at lesson number 6, which is Jesus' model of leadership. And there is no greater leader in this world's history than Jesus Christ. And so we're going to be looking at how he was a leader and taking notes of his leadership styles that we can apply to our lives. Bill Donahue once said, Jesus Christ is an authentic leader, one who is truthful and honest about the past, connects to the present, and points his followers to a future that builds on both. Jesus has been seen as the greatest leader of all time. Any study of leadership without looking at Jesus is a serious oversight. How do we know that Jesus was a great leader? Well, we know that he was a great leader because of the fruit of his life. Even though his life on the earth was short, and even though he only functioned in official ministry for less than 4 years, he had incredible fruit. He gathered many followers. He trained a team of world-changing leaders. He transformed all of history through his words and his life. His words are cited more as authority than any other single individual. He started the greatest movement that the world has ever witnessed, and he is talked about by millions of people daily, nearly 2,000 years after leaving the earth. What are some of the qualities that made Jesus a great leader? Jesus understood that his business was to be about his Father's business. We see this in Luke 2:49. He understood that as a Christian, we are not doing what we do because we have chosen to do it, but because God has chosen us. And we see that in John 15:16. Let's take a look at Luke 2:49. He says, "And he said to them, 'Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?'" Jesus knew how to submit to God-ordained authority. Submission begets submission. The only way a leader can expect to bear authority is to be personally submitted to authority. Let's look at Luke chapter 2, verses 51 and 52. It says, "Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth, and there he was subjected to them. But his mother kept all these things in her heart, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men." Jesus understood his calling and his responsibility to accomplish it. In John 8:42, we read, Jesus said to them, "If God were your Father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from God. Nor have I come of myself, but he sent me." Jesus understood that the highest calling was to please his Father and love people. We can take a look at Matthew 22, verses 36 through 40. It says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus said to them, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." Jesus understood that what he did was for the purpose of bringing glory to God. In John 7:18, we read, "He who speaks from himself seeks his own glory, but he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true, and no unrighteousness is in him." Jesus understood that his success was dependent on his relationship with his heavenly Father. John 5:19 reads, "Then Jesus answered and said to them, 'Most assuredly I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he sees the Father do. For whatever he does, the Son also does in like manner. Jesus understood that his boundaries for ministry had been determined by the Father. In Matthew 15:24 we read, "But he answered and said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Jesus lived what he preached. He led by example. You know, my dad, when I was growing up, my dad had all these little sayings that he would say, and one of them was, practice what you preach. You may have heard this. I'm sure many of you have heard this before. Practice what you preach. Lead by example. Now, Jesus' words lined up with his works, with God's works. Let's look at John chapter 14, verses 10 and 11. It says, "Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father in me? The words that I speak to you, I do not speak of my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does the work. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father is in me, or else believe me for the sake of the works themselves." Jesus was able to resist the temptations of wealth, fame, and power. He was tested in all of these things, yet remained true to his primary mission. Jesus was willing to lay his life down for others. Jesus demonstrated high levels of integrity. In John chapter 6, verse 63, we read, "It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak to you are spirit, and they are life." Jesus knew how to act decisively. When Jesus saw the money changers in the temple, he moved decisively to deal with it. Jesus led with passion. Jesus was zealous for God and for his house. John 2:17 says, "Then his disciples remembered that it was written, 'Zeal for your house has eaten me up.'" Jesus was not intimidated by the opposition. All of the different political groups and religious groups tried to catch him in his words, but he was not intimidated by their questions of him. And Jesus led by compassion, not fear. In Mark 6:34 we read, "And Jesus, when he came out, saw a great multitude and was moved with compassion for them, and he was moved with compassion for them, because they were like sheep not having a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things." Jesus was a finisher who knew how to finish what he had started. John 17, verses 4 and 5 says, "I have glorified you on the earth. I have finished the work which you have given me to do. And now, O Father, glorify me together with yourself, with the glory which I had with you before the world was." Little insight there. What are some of the some leadership principles that we are functioning in the life and ministry of Jesus, that we see functioning in the life and ministry of Jesus? Jesus had a clear vision and goals, and he reached all of them. He declared that vision from the very first days of his ministry. He declared the work finished when it was accomplished. Mark chapter 1, verse 38 says, "But he said to them, 'Let us go into the next towns, that I may preach there also, because for this purpose I have come.'" Jesus was a thinker. He believed he could touch the entire world, and he did. Let's take a look at Mark 16:15. It says, "And he said to them, 'Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature.'" Jesus was not controlled by the expectations of others. He did not dance to their music. He had a script that was given to him from the Father, and he did not waver from it. Matthew 12, verses 38 and 39 says, Then some of the scribes and Pharisees answered, saying, Teacher, we want to see a sign from you. But he answered and said to them, An evil and adulterous generation seeks signs, and no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. Jesus was not partial or arbitrary, but had one standard for all. He was not tempted to change the standard for the rich, for relatives, or for the people of prestige and power. His relatives were not given special treatment. You see that in Matthew chapter 12, verses 46 through 50. The wealthy were not given special treatment. You see that in Matthew chapter 19, 16 through 20. And the powerful were not given special treatment. You see that in John 3, 1 through 5. Jesus was always realistic about the cost of the vision. He let his followers know from the front end what the cost of building with him would be. Jesus taught and demonstrated a servant model of leadership. He demonstrated that if you want to be great, you want to learn to serve, you must learn to serve not only those who can benefit you, but everyone. Jesus taught with authority and conviction. Jesus exuded confidence and used imperatives in his teaching. He did not use words like perhaps or maybe, or you might consider doing this or that. Jesus knew how to discriminate between good and bad traditions. He was willing to eject everything that was hindering the primary objective. Jesus communicated at a level at which he could be understood. Not only did he use the very common language of that day, he spoke in terms that could not be misunderstood. Jesus was careful in selecting the right team. While he had many followers, he took the choice of his team members very seriously, seeking God fervently so that he could make the right choice. Jesus chose a diverse team with a variety of skill and experience. The 12 apostles were a very diverse people, including skilled and unskilled, educated and uneducated, political and apolitical, rich and poor. Jesus understood that there is strength in diversity and that a good team involves a variety of talent. Jesus focused his efforts on the development of his team. You see that in Mark 3:14. While he ministered openly to the masses, he spent intimate time with only a few. While some of his time was spent with crowds, most of his time was spent preparing his team. It says that in Mark 3:14 it says, Then he appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach. Jesus knew how to delegate to others to fulfill his vision. Even in the smallest thing, such as a mass feeding scheme, he delegated much of the task to others. He only focused on what others could not do. Jesus empowered his team to function as he did. Jesus imparted to them his team the secrets of his success and then empowered them and released them to function. Jesus focused on coaching and mentoring his team to be able to do what he could do. His goal was to reproduce himself. To do so, he would need to stand on the sidelines and let the team do their part. Luke chapter 11, verses 1 and 2 says, Now it came to pass, as he was praying in a certain place, when he ceased, that one of his disciples said to him, Lord, teach us to pray, as John also taught his disciples. So he said to them, When you pray, say, and of course we know what he gave him, the Our Father. Jesus inspected the fruit of his followers. Jesus believed in reporting and in giving an account. He used all of the training times as learning opportunities, whether they're proved to be positive or negative. Jesus was willing to give people another chance after failure. We see that in John 8:11. Whether it was Peter who let him down or Thomas who doubted his resurrection, Jesus had patience with their immaturity and lack of faith. Jesus did not overlook the next generation. All generations were important to Jesus, especially the youth. He understood that if you're going to build for a future, the youth must be a big part of your vision. Matthew 19:13 and verses 13 and 14 says, "Then little children were brought to him that he might put his hands on them and pray. But the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, 'Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven.' And he laid his hands on them and departed from there." Jesus confronted problems head on. Jesus did not let things sit. If someone needed a rebuke, he would give it and follow it up with loving instruction. Let's take a look at Luke chapter 9, verses 51 through 56. It says, "Now it came to pass, when the time had come for him to be received up, that he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem, and sent messengers before his face. And as they went, they entered a village of the Samaritans to prepare for him. But they did not receive him, because his face was set on the journey to Jerusalem. And when his disciples James and John saw this, they said, 'Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, just as Elijah did?' But he turned and rebuked them and said, 'You do not know what manner of spirit you are. For the Son of Man did not come to destroy man's lives, but to save them.' And they went on to another village." Jesus raised up successors. It is said that there is no success without a successor. Jesus trained and released an army of leaders to follow in his footsteps. Jesus knew how to let the right group of people into his plans at just the right time. Jesus released certain sensitive information slowly, beginning with his core followers and moving beyond. We can take a look at Matthew chapter 16, verse 21. Or rather, let's take a look at Mark 5:43. It says, "From that time Jesus began to show to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and be raised up the third day." Jesus was the first one to die for his vision. He did not ask more from others than he was prepared to give himself. You know, there's a lot to be said here, a lot to be learned. I strongly recommend that you download the accompanying study guides, which you'll find in the description below, and rewatch the video if you want to watch this over and over again. But get an idea, just by listening to all of this and looking at all of this, you can see Jesus was a great leader, but he did it by serving others and looking out for others more than himself. And it's my prayer that you do the same thing and raise up other leaders who all do the same thing. Till next time, this is Dr. Thomas Moore saying, I love you. God bless.